Hi everyone, welcome. I'm here with Olivia Wong Olimoley of Olimoley League fame and Olimoley League is what I just said. God, I'm falling for the meme.
Yay.
Pleasure to be here with you. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks.
That's great. Today, guys, is kind of a special announcement. I'm going to take a beat here and thank Esports Heaven. This video is brought to you by esportsheaven.com. If you've been following me for any length of time, then you're already familiar with Esports Heaven as a platform. So I hope you're watching this on Esports Heaven. And if you're not, go close the YouTube tab and go watch it over there. But remember to subscribe and follow me on Twitter for all the updates and everything like that. Yeah, get that plug in. All right. So here we go. First things first, there's been an injury in the family. You're married to
Yeah.
former pro player, former Axiom guy, streamer Crank, and he hurt his neck, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, he was exercising with our dog Murphy, and it just like he's not really sure what happened either. So it's been an old injury for a very long time. His neck isn't exactly like the greatest, and a lot of pro gamers have back or neck injuries. And his was doing fine, and then all of a sudden it just hurt way too much, and he had to go to the doctor. They gave him a neck brace, and it should be okay as long as he's on bed rest for a little bit. So he can't stream right now or really do much of anything but lay there. Poor guy. I think he can see me, but yeah. So he's just resting right now, and hopefully he should be back soon.
That's good. I know that there's a lot of love in the community for him. He's just such a lovable guy. Also, you have a dog named Murphy. Murphy's my last
Yeah,
name.
yeah, yeah. We have I have one dog named Murphy and another dog named Zola, and you can see them a lot on Crank stream because they like to chill over here sometimes and stuff like that.
I know in the past you've said that your dogs are like a big passion in your life. You've said that in a couple of interviews, I think. What's
Oh
it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You brought them over from the States, didn't you? How was that experience?
Yeah, so Murphy, I adopted when I was in the States, and I also adopted Zola, and they're around the same age. When I came to Korea, I had to leave them with my parents, because I didn't know if I would be here in Korea for a very long time. But after I got married, and we figured, okay, we'll probably stay in Korea for a bit. I We made the whole like, okay, let's get their documents ready, let's get the whole like flight set up, and they both came here together around the same time, and we just brought them here, and I think they're doing okay. They've only been here for a few months now, but they seem to be okay, and they seem to be adapting pretty well.
So, into the Oli Moly history then. You said in an interview with Girls on Games that you were introduced to gaming and video gaming through a game called Desert Storm that you played with your family. So talk to me a bit about that beginning in nerd culture for you.
Yeah, my family, we have my immediate family. I have an older sister who actually works for Blizzard right now, and I also have a two girl cousins that are around the same age as us. So when we were little, we used to play a lot of video games since we slept. We had a lot of sleepovers, so we would just spend our days or spend our nights basically like playing games and trying to beat them. It used to be Gauntlet, and we cleared that. And then I think, yeah, there was Desert Storm, and I think we were working on Desert Storm 2 before we got a little bit too old, and like we had to start like studying and blah blah blah. So that's basically how I got into gaming and things like that. I used to have a PlayStation, and then we got the PlayStation 2, and then it just kind of built up from there. And then we got our own computer, and then I I kind of started playing a lot of MMOs. So that's kind of where I started as I guess like with all my gaming stuff.
Awesome. Out of curiosity, what does your sister do at Blizzard?
She works with TESPA, which is the Esports Association, which is a part of Blizzard that focuses on collegiate stuff. So they do Heroes of the Dorm. Uh, I think they're starting they used to do StarCraft 2, like they had an Archon tournament recently, I believe, and then they're working on some other stuff. I'm not like totally sure. I just know which part of Blizzard she's on.
Awesome. You also got your start in esports with TESPA, and at the time it was the Texas Esports Agency or Association. How did you come
Yeah.
into that? How did you start that esports journey?
Well, I was part of the university that TESPA started in, which is the University of Texas at Austin. So I joined the organization because I was actually looking for people to play League of Legends with. I know, and I'm sorry, I guess, but I was a part of that, and they were currently in the process of working on Lone Star Clash 2. And so that's when I joined and I got involved with volunteering at for Lone Star Clash 2. And that's also where I met Total Biscuit, Jenna, and Crank is at Lone Star Clash 2. And that's kind of where I got introduced to StarCraft 2. And from there, that's kind of how that started.
So while you were with TESPA, I believe your official position was webmaster, and you were responsible for the official website for the organization. What was it like working with TESPA? What were your duties with that organization?
With TESPA, I was in charge of the website, yeah. And so what I mostly did there was at that time they were also expanding to other universities. So I helped other universities get their website set up and stuff like that. And with TESPA at UT, I was focused on making articles and writing about pro gamers that were coming out of UT, which was Paul, who was studying there at the time, uh, and some other StarCraft 2 players, I believe, and also League of Legends players. So I was kind of building articles for players that were coming out of university.
So you were working with TESPA during your college years, and then you worked with IGN's IPL 5 tournament, and then you were offered a position. Then you were offered a position with Axiom Esports, which was the team
Mhm.
owned by Total Biscuit and Jenna Bain, Intricacy. Tell me, how did that come to be? How did you get your position with Axiom?
So with Axiom, like I said, I met them at Lone Star Clash 2 when I was working there, and I met them again at IPL 5 because I was also working there. So it was kind of like a chance to meeting where I kept a meeting with them and we would catch up and be like, oh, so how's Axiom going? What are you up to? Things like that. And Jenna kind of was like, we're building up our team, we're getting more people, and we would really like to start making content for Axiom. And so she was like, well, I know you're also starting out, so let's just start it together. And that's kind of where I came in as the content manager for Axiom.
So, like you said, you were the content manager for Axiom, and eventually became the team manager. But while you were content manager, you focused a lot on content that would really display the players' personalities. And this is during a period of time in the StarCraft community where lots of fans were saying that Koreans didn't really display their personalities. They weren't that exciting to watch because there weren't that many strong, interesting things happening on stage while they were being interviewed or anything like that. So you produced AMAs, video content of the players hanging out, things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about your goals with this content?
Yeah. So, like you said, during that time, there was a lot of, oh, these Koreans, they're kind of all the same on stage. They have the same answers. They don't really do anything, I guess, noticeable for people. And part of that was because one, it's it was kind of difficult to translate that personality when at the same time they had to be professional. It it's not really it's not really cool for them to be like, oh yeah, this guy's shit, or oh, this guy sucks, I'm gonna totally wreck him, things like that. People like people like MC are kind of like the outlier of what would be acceptable culture, I guess, is kind of what I would call it. But at the same time, it's not like they were totally like empty or anything like that. It was just their personality on stage and how they are in their team house or in person can be very different, because the stage can be pretty daunting, and especially if you're going to be interviewed in a language that's not familiar to you. So what I wanted to do with the Axiom videos was kind of show how chill everybody was, especially when they're in a team house, especially when everybody's cool with each other, when everybody's really friendly. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with my videos, which is interview players and kind of get questions that were being asked on stage, and two, basically show people, these people aren't what you see on stage. They're really cool, and that's why you should you should cheer for them. So that's a lot of what my videos were about.
Do you feel that this content that you produced with the Axiom had a noticeable impact on that kind of foreign mentality in the foreign scene after, showing their personalities and everything like that? Do you think that had far-reaching effects in the whole of the StarCraft 2 scene?
I feel like it did, and I hopefully hope it did. uh, I still feel like people recognize Ryung as being a really free spirited person and enjoys making jokes, which he is. So I think that a lot of the videos helped with that. Uh, I do I do feel like I could have done a lot better with some of the players, and hopefully some of the players that I've interviewed came off as unique and interesting to other people. Because like I know how Alicia is as a person, and he's really cool, and I consider him like my big brother, and I hope people also got that feeling too. And even if it wasn't my players, I do think that a lot of people are beginning to recognize Korean players as who they are, like innovation. Unfortunately, he just is very quiet, and he's very quiet, and he's very shy, and he's also very, I don't want to say mechanical, and unfortunately it's just like he's okay with like being recognized as that, I guess, I suppose. He just is, because he is very good at being like his macro and micro. So it's just a part of his personality, and I can't do anything about that.
Stone-faced killer
Yeah.
innovation. um, I mean, you kind of spoke to it a little bit just now, talking about Alicia and how you kind of think of him as a big brother. You got married to Crank, so
Yeah.
I Axiom felt like such a close knit organization, and not just like the players, but all the staff involved too. I mean, Jenna put her heart and soul, it seemed, into the brand. Same for TB. What was the environment in Axiom? What was it like working with that kind of vibe?
I think it made it a lot easier because we were very invested in our players because we knew them and we were close to them, but it also made it very hard at the same time because if we had to talk realistically, our players weren't getting the results we wanted, unfortunately, at certain times, especially towards the end of Axiom. So it was also very difficult for us to be like, yeah, things aren't going well, we should consider either hiring someone else, firing somebody, or thinking things like, okay, who exactly do we want to take to a tournament? Because if we look at results, this person isn't doing well, and unfortunately, we'll probably have to pick someone else. And we tried really hard to make sure that our players understood why exactly we made the choices that we had to choose. Like, say we only had enough in our budget to send one person to an event. We were very clear on making sure that people knew why. Like, okay, his practice results were good, yours were also good, but he also has been doing well on online tournaments, so this is why we are sending him instead of you and stuff like that. So it made it a lot easier for us to make decisions like that because everybody understood and there weren't any like hard feelings because we were very expressive and very open in communication. But at the same time, when it was towards the end of Axiom, it was also very hard for us to see that we weren't getting the results that we wanted because we knew all of our players, we knew how their practice was, but it wasn't translating well into offline tournaments.
Currently, Total Biscuit is running the Shoutcraft Kings tournament like every month, and you're involved in that. You're the admin for that tournament. So tell us about how that kind of came to be. Obviously, you've stayed in touch with Total Biscuit.
Mm-hmm. It was Shoutcraft King was his idea, and it was a really good one. It was the whole idea of Shoutcraft Kings, and I'm sure he could probably tell you more about it than I could, was the whole idea of having an unfair tournament and being a little bit more unique with tournament styles and kind of making it more brutal. So it's a very interesting tournament, and I think that's what captures a lot of attention for it, is that it's a best of one. The winner gets to choose the map, If you basically stay up and play one tournament, and if you can't, or one game, and if you can't win that game, it's done. Like, too bad. And for me, my part of that is to basically round up all the players, make sure they're there, get them in the game, and stuff like that. And kind of like every month we choose different players. So I'm also kind of like, oh, maybe this person would be good or something like that.
So do you do the recruiting of the players as well? Or are you the person who reaches out to everybody to say, hey, you should come and play in this tournament?
It kind of depends. Like, I'm not actively involved with, finding the players, but me, Crank, and John are all in a chat where we kind of discuss who we would think would be good to see in the next one and stuff like that. So we're all involved with the drafting of the players, but Crank obviously takes care of like inviting the Korean players, and John also is involved with inviting the foreign players.
You also mentioned there getting the players in on time for their games. And I think just recently you guys had a bit of a problem with that with a particular player. How often does that occur? Is there often a situation where somebody's not where they need to be at the correct time and you need to go hunt them down? What's that like?
Not really. Like, at the beginning, it was more like trying to find our footing to make sure that everything was like efficiently run. So we've already like developed a system now where we're like, okay, instead of having all 20 players there like at the same time and like waiting forever, we've actually begun staggering to make sure that players who we know we wouldn't entirely field right up can come a little bit later.
Now, of course, all of this Shoutcraft tournament adminning comes on the back of a tremendous amount of experience for you. These days, you're probably best known for running the Olimoley, which is a weekly Korean online StarCraft 2 tournament with a monthly offline finals, and it's all thanks to crowdfunding from the fans, thanks to Patreon. So
Yay.
Tell us a little bit about how the Olimoley kind of came to you as a concept and how you executed it.
So the Alima League was actually run during the time that I was still a part of Axiom. And during that time, I was noticing uh, there weren't a lot of tournaments that could fill the downtime between WCS events or offline events. And of course, there were like weekly tournaments here and there, but they were either for NA or EU or particularly like not so great time for Korea, like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. So what I thought of was, okay, why don't I just make my own tournament, something that will be run consistently, where Korean players could actually like participate in it. It would be on their server, and it's kind of like a way where they can earn money, a little bit of money, and two, kind of showcase themselves where they wouldn't really be able to because they had GSL and SSL and Pro League, and I think GSTL was still there. Maybe, maybe not. I'm a little hazy on when GSTL ended, but they only had those tournaments, and at the same time, it wasn't necessarily guaranteed. If they didn't qualify to advance in the rounds, then they were done. So they had only like two qualifiers a month, where they could really be like, okay, can I advance on to GSTL or I mean GSL or SSL? And if they didn't, what were they going to do during that downtime? So my whole idea with Olima League was that it would be a weekly tournament where they could kind of play and, freshen their skills, showcase themselves to a foreign audience, and earn a little bit money. So that's how the Olima League came about.
It's a crowd-funded league. It's funded through fans on Patreon. And I'm of the mentality, I believe that most StarCraft 2 crowdfunding initiatives are sadly underfunded 90% of the time. The goals aren't met, or they kind of just scrape by, it seems. And there's a little bit of a history with that, with like Take TV initiatives and GameHeart, and etc. and so on and so forth. Did you have any worries when you started the crowdfunding initiative for the Olimo League? Were there any concerns in your mind?
Of course, yeah. I I went through with this with a very, very low number, just $100 to do the weekly, things like that. And I was very, very, and I'm very specific on how the money is spent on the Patreon. So people can see exactly where all the money goes, how much Patreon takes as a fee and things like that. It was all calculated inside the milestone goals. So people can very, very clearly see where that money is going. And I wanted to be very clear about that because obviously, yeah, there has been times in the StarCraft 2 community where there have been Kickstarters or fundraising things where people were promising either too much and weren't fulfilling it, or they were promised stuff and it just never got done. So I wanted to be very, very clear on that, and I also didn't want to seem like I was taking a lot. And that's kind of why I chose Patreon too instead of Kickstarter or something like that, because it was going to be a consistent tournament, and it's not like Kickstarter is only for like one-time events. So I focused on Patreon because one, it's a consistent tournament, like ultimately goes on every week and things like that. But at the same time, I don't get any money or nothing is charged unless the event happens. So with Patreon, every month is paying for the next month. So it starts out like that. So nobody gets charged unless the weekly actually does happen.
Some of the very positive news to come from 2016 for StarCraft was the announcement that the Olimo League was partnering with Twitch in Korea. How did that partnership come to be?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting it. They approached me, actually, and were like, we see that you are making a tournament for Koreans. We want to help you, we want to help you grow more, especially because at the time I only had one English, only one English cast. So it was a Korean tournament for Koreans, but only casted in English. So it was the Lemon League format's kind of weird that way. Like a lot of the Patreons are also foreigners, so it's a Korean tournament for Koreans that is watched by foreigners and also kickstarted by or like crowdfunded by foreigners. So it gets a little weird when you try to explain it and stuff. But they were like, we know that there is a StarCraft 2 audience in Korea that would really enjoy to watch it. So why don't we help you guys grow and also get a Korean cast going for you guys so everybody can kind of enjoy it.
You've worked with VSL, which is the company responsible for the VSL Team League that happened last month for StarCraft 2. They've also ran an Overwatch tournament. VSL seems to be real newcomers to the Korean esports scene. Can you tell us anything about who they are as a company and what maybe their goals are?
I can't really say like what their goals are and stuff like that, but I can tell you like VSL is actually the studio that Olimoley is run out of, and they are also in charge of the production of the offline part of Olimoley. So they ran the Olimoley Grand Finals out in Busan and stuff like that, and they have been excellent so far. And I think that it's really great that they are kind of taking initiative to make their own tournaments, especially in a time period where there aren't a lot of new studios popping up in Korea. So that's pretty cool.
Tying in with that, what sort of goals for viewership do you have for the Alima League in Korea? Is growing the Korean audience for your brand kind of a high priority goal for you right now?
For the Lima League, to be honest, if I had to say, obviously a lot of more viewers would be great because that means that what we're doing is actually gathering interest and things like that. But the thing that I've always said with the Lima League is that as long as people gave gave the money to fund the prize pool, Alima League would keep going. So, although, like, of course, I'm not going to deny and say, oh, well, viewership, what? I don't give a crap about that. Like, the whole thing is that as long as it keeps like people still want it to keep going, it'll keep going.
So viewership is maybe not an afterthought, but it's lower on the totem pole than just making it happen. Then that's what I'm hearing. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Lots of people said that the closure of Pro League, which was announced just a couple months ago, might turn out to be a net positive for yourself and for the Limo League, simply because there's less StarCraft 2 for people to watch and for people to support. And for a lot of people, supporting Korean StarCraft is a really big thing. Do you agree with that mentality? Has there been a noticeable change in your numbers for viewership or crowdfunding or anything like that after the end of Pro League?
I think it's a little bit hard to say. We definitely did get a lot of new signups for the Patreon, but at the same time, it was also around the end of the season for Lima League where we were wrapping up and getting ready for the grand finals. So I'm not entirely sure I can say, yeah, it did great stuff, or yeah, there's going to be a boost in viewership or something like that. But I think we can already see the effects of Kespa's like closing of the teams and Pro League not continuing. We're kind of seeing one that players that we wouldn't have normally seen on online tournaments are participating in online tournaments now. They're streaming, whether it be for income or just finding a team. And speaking of teams, we're actually seeing players get involved with many different teams, So we're already seeing that effect, but I don't think we've seen all of it. Just because it's hard to say what will happen with all the players that are currently still trying to find teams. Are they going to keep continuing? Do they have a timeline where they're like, okay, it's not working. I think it's time to wrap this up and retire. But at the same time, we're also seeing other people step up at the same time because we have Korean community casters come out. We have people saying, why don't we make a Korean weeklies or Korean tournaments or tournaments that are open for everybody, things like that.
So speaking about Pro League is obviously shut down now because of a lot of different reasons, I'm sure, but a large part of it is the match fixing scandal, which you kind of helped to break in 2015. Um, Lots of different people that I've talked to from the Korean scene have said, that match fixing is indeed like the thing that hurt the Korean scene the most. But some people in the foreign scene still have this idea that it was WCS and region locking. What are your thoughts on that? What are your opinions? What's your insight on how big a deal match fixing was for the Korean scene and for Korean StarCraft?
Well, like when I broke the news, I suppose the thing is that it was a problem, yeah. And then the response to that was to make sure that Kespa was more careful about where they let their players participate, which I definitely understand. But then the news about Life came out where it was a situation where the whole team was, or a majority of the team was involved with this match fixing thing. And then it was Life, who was a WCS BlizzCon winner, and things like that. And so I don't I don't necessarily want to say that it's not WCS or something like that, but I do think that the match fixing situation in Korea is what caused a lot of sponsors to look at StarCraft 2 and say, I don't really want to touch that because y'all guys are a mess, and I can't really sell, I don't really want to be involved or have my brand involved with a game that's so messy and obviously has a lot of scandals. So when somebody like as big as Life, who had tons of fans and still has tons of fans, which it just boggles my mind. It really affects the viewership too, and people are very disappointed in seeing somebody that they idolized do something so badly, So the whole situation really hurt how stable the scene was in Korea. And it's very, very difficult to come back from that. The thing is that if you look at the 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 players that Kespa teams have sponsored, there are much smaller games that they still have individual players that they hire on to their team. But if you look at how the disbandment of the StarCraft 2 teams were, they didn't even bother to hire like one individual person or anything like that. And that's a situation where you have to look at that and be like, well, there's still some really great players. Why don't you, instead of just hiring a team, why don't you just sponsor one individual player? But the thing is that they can't look at StarCraft 2 anymore and be like, this one player is really good. Why don't we just hire him? Because they don't want to get involved with all of that anymore because of what Life did. So it's just bad feelings all around,
That's a fantastic point to add in. This is the kind of thing that I like. I don't talk to a ton of people in the Korean scene. I've talked to Artosis, I've talked to Wolf, I've talked to yourself and I've talked to Myungsik, and it's just like this recurring thing where, yeah, match fixing is a big deal. Yeah, match fixing is a big deal. Yes, it's match fixing. It's a huge deal here. And like when the news for Pro League broke, I don't know if you like checked Reddit that day or anything like that, but so many people were so quick to say, "Oh, WCS killed it. It's Blizzard's fault. It's WCS." And like it's such a multi-leveled situation, but I don't know, based on what I know about it and based on what I'm told about it, everything on the top level is just like, yeah, match fixing was really, really big.
It like you can't expect a team league to come back after a whole big thing happened where one whole team was like, well, you know what, we're not going to make the top, so let's just cheat our way to the bottom. You can't come back for that, and I don't think people should have expected to be honest, like I think it's even amazing that SSL is still thinking about doing stuff, especially since they've been burned pretty badly.
So in February 2015, you helped to break this story. You really broke it kind of single-handedly, realistically, that there was a problem with match fixing in Korea and in the Korean scene. So tell us a little bit about how you came upon that information that match fixing was occurring in Korean StarCraft.
Yeah. The way that I came across it was because I was the manager of Axiom at that time, and one of my players was actually approached by another player to match fix the GSL qualifier. And my player said, no, do not talk to me ever again. He informed me, and I was like, what can we do about this? Because this player conspired to basically match fix at the event. And so I was trying to find out what I could do to make sure it didn't happen again. More specifically, how do I make sure that that specific player was investigated or punished for trying to do that? And I was also at the time getting more involved with adminning tournaments and things like that. And it was kind of like discussed throughout the tournament organizer community, where they were like, oh, did you guys get contacted by this person who is this Korean person who's like, oh, we want to sponsor your events. How can we do that? We have money, but we have some conditions. And so I was learning more and more about that, where they had approached people that were casting online events and saying, we have money, we would totally love to make a tournament with you guys. Here's the thing, we want to it was very different for each tournament, but a general list of things that would happen would be like, the delay had to be pretty long, or I'm fine with sponsoring your tournament, but I also want to observe, or you have to let me and my friend observe, or blah, blah, blah. Or they did things like, oh, but we want you to invite specific players, or we want the matchup to be like this. So I'm not saying that's how all the standards were for each tournament, but like just a sprinkle of stuff that was happening in these many different tournaments. And so I was hearing about that, and I was kind of like connecting it all, trying to connect all the dots and stuff. And that's basically what I found out.
This week, or last week now, I guess, last week, the format for WCS 2017 was revealed, and not only is it the format for WCS 2017, but Blizzard also kind of subtly announced WCS 2018 in the post as well, saying that year the WCS format would look largely the same as 2017, which looks largely the same as this year 2016. What are your initial kind of impressions of the WCS 2017 format now that it's released?
So my initial reaction was because, well, the first reaction was to wait because when it was first announced, it was kind of leaked. It wasn't really fully announced. So we only got to see the graphic of how the format would be, you know? And I think a lot of people had a lot of reactions then when it wasn't really fully announced. So maybe next time wait. But at the same time, when you look at what they've announced so far and things like that, I think that it's one really great that they are already confirming or saying, we're in this for the long run. We're going to be here for 2018 too. I think that's great. And second, like the fact that they're trying to keep up with the amount of money that they are pouring into StarCraft 2, especially in this time where it would have been really easy for them to say, like, we have another game that we've released, and we're also trying to grow their esports. Why don't we allocate the budget somewhere else? They could have done that, but they didn't, and I think that's also really great. So, all in all, like, of course, there's always going to be the debate of should Blizzard have region locked it? Are they ever going to get rid of the region lock or something like that? But if you look at it, like they've already tried to clarify and confirm that yes, we're going to have global tournaments, and we're going to have we're matching the prize pool of like last year, and at the same time they're also trying to make it more streamlined, where okay, this is regional, this is challenger, there's no more there shouldn't be any more questions about points and which tournaments do you automatically get into BlizzCon with, or which ones are just points, and that whole like, okay, who exactly has enough points now kind of thing.
I kind of liked following that at the end of the year. I don't know, maybe it's just me. You kind of talked a little bit. You touched on the idea that they're going to bring in global events. This was a real hot button issue last year in 2016 because it was announced that there would be global events, and a lot of people felt that kind of promise kind of stayed unfulfilled. So this year we have IEM Katowice, the IEM Worlds. Then we've got a GSL All-Stars tournament and WCS. Those are the global tournaments on the docket for 2017. Do you feel like that's really enough? Do you know if the Korean scene and the Korean pros feel that that's enough? Is it maybe a little lacking still?
To be honest, I haven't read I've kind of been busy handling this person over there that like broke his neck or whatever, but I haven't actually like read too much about what the Korean reaction is so far. But I think that it's very easy to be like, that's not enough, you should do more, and stuff, and be super negative about it. But I don't really want to go that route this time, because I feel like they're already promising 3, and I think if they don't fulfill that, I think a lot of people would be really ready to riot the streets. So I think that they already took a big risk to say, yes, there's going to be 3, maybe there's going to be more, like, but we can confirm now that there's going to be 3. So I think that they kind of like took a big risk already. And I think that a lot of people are very easy to realize, or like very quick to say, Blizzard, you should do more, when they are already trying to do as much as they can. And it's also not so great to be like, Blizzard, do more, when I think that a lot of the community, as in like the tournament organizers, I had a very difficult time to think like if there is going to be more WCS stuff, how do we fit in, you know? And I think it's going to be a big balance of, WCS stuff and Blizzard run events or like Blizzard sponsored events and the community run tournaments. So I don't think that we can be like, Blizzard, do more. We can also look towards the community and be like, hey, we have a lot of tournaments coming up. Are you guys going to make more tournaments? I would really love to watch that or something like that.
Kind of touching on that concept, in the lead up to this announcement, lots of people were saying that they hope WCS 2017 had more support for grassroots initiatives, grassroots efforts. As someone really fronting that kind of scene, the grassroots StarCraft scene, do you feel that WCS 2017 is better overall for the people running grassroots StarCraft?
From what I know, yes. I mean, like, we can already see that Blizzard's already making an effort to support community run tournaments, like, for example, Ladder Heroes. And they're actually, like, Shoutcraft Kings is a Blizzard sponsored event, And those two tournaments are already like running really well and they have Blizzard's backing. So you can look at WCS and be like, are the WCS plans? But you should also realize that Blizzard is also trying to help community tournaments and already have started.
This week, I think actually just yesterday from the time of recording, SPO TV released a statement talking about SSL, and it seemed to imply that they would have liked to have been a part of the WCS 2017 series in Korea, and they might actually just run a StarCraft 2 event anyway. At least that was the implication in their statement. Do you know anything about the potential plans of SPO TV in regards to 2017 StarCraft?
I didn't really hear anything, so I was pretty surprised to see that they released a statement themselves saying like, oh, we still plan on doing StarCraft 2 events, and I think that that's great. But I have no idea. I had no idea what their plans were.
So where exactly do you see the Korean StarCraft 2 scene headed now? You spoke earlier about players having maybe a time limit for their career, maybe get picked up by X date or I retire. Obviously, some smaller foreign teams have started picking up some Korean players of maybe lesser notoriety. Dust picking up Bunny and Hush, and Is Imba picking up Armani. Do you know of any smaller Korean organizations looking for players? What's the general outlook and scope of the scene right now, headed into 2017?
So I don't know about team pickups or things like that, or just like specific players or things like what are they going to do, stuff like that. I can only assume from the general way things usually go is that some will start looking into the army enlistment because it's mandatory that all men have to go to the army in Korea. So some will probably look to just get their mandatory service done or something like that, or go back to university. Maybe they'll stick it out for WCS 2017. It's hard to say. I can know for sure though that I don't think that the StarCraft 2 scene in South Korea will just completely fade out and there's nothing, and all this talk about it's the StarCraft 2 scene in Korea is definitely dead, because we can already see that StarCraft 2 fans in Korea were pretty upset with IEM Korea, where they were like, we want to go and support StarCraft 2, but StarCraft 2's schedule is kind of weird. Or we can see in the Olimoley Korean channel, where we keep growing in viewers every week. And then there is Golden's channel, where he is casting foreign events in Korean for the Korean fans, and Crank TV, which is Crank's channel that he runs with Ryung and Alicia, where they're also casting tournaments in Korean for Korean fans. And we've already seen like a lot of people say, thank you so much for doing that because we do want to watch StarCraft 2.
You kind of touched on it just now very briefly. IEM Gyeonggi, I hope that's how it's pronounced.
Gyeonggi?
Gyeonggi? Gyeonggi?
Yeah, it's hard. I know.
I'm sorry, everybody. But that IEM is happening this weekend. I believe the event is being produced by OGN, and there's a fair bit of controversy surrounding it. The time slots aren't very good. They canceled an autograph event. Can you kind of explain the StarCraft 2 fans' reaction to all this going on? Like, what exactly is happening with this IEM?
Yeah, so the situation is that like Korean StarCraft 2 fans aren't exactly pleased when the schedule was released because they bought their tickets assuming that they would be able to see the round of 16 and the round of 8, but it turns out that it was the round of 16 and the round of 8 weren't planned on being in studio where fans could go and see it. It was kind of in an office setting where it wasn't going to be casted by OGN. So it kind of left not players, but fans upset because they bought their tickets assuming that they would be able to watch the whole format. And it was disappointing to see that one, StarCraft 2 was kind of wedged in between, or like wedged in the schedule, like with like one match essentially a day or something like that. And two, that they wouldn't actually be able to see the round of 16 or the round of 8. And it left a lot of people thinking that's not really great. And then the statement was released by OGN saying, StarCraft 2 just doesn't net the income for us to justify this. And it caused a little bit more outrage because it really wasn't necessary to say that at all. So it's just very, very unfortunate that they did release something so clear-cut and brutal. I do think that it's a little unfortunate that they aren't giving StarCraft 2 a chance at all, because it does seem like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of that they don't think that it's going to net profits, so they don't set up a stage for it. They just give it like a bad time slot and stuff. And so when people look at that, they don't want to invest their money into it. Like, they want to refund their ticket because they're like, well, why would I just go for like one match a day or something like that? That's not worth it. And then they look at those numbers and they're like, well, see, StarCraft 2 didn't give us anything. So it's an unfortunate self-fulfilling prophecy.
So I take some fan questions on Twitter and on the Team Liquid thread when I do this. For future reference, guys, if you see a thread on Reddit asking for questions for an interview that I'm doing, but I didn't post the thread, you're probably going to be better off like tweeting at me or PMing me or something like that, because I won't necessarily see your questions on the thread that I didn't make because I won't get notifications for it. Just saying. Anyways, we have some questions for you from the fans. Hard Revenge on Twitter asks, what is the most frustrating part about administrating an event/tournament? And do you have any stories that you want to share?
Yeah. So the most frustrating part, I think, admin to player wise, is that you can say something as many times as you want, but you'll still have one person be like, oh, wait, what are we supposed to do? For example, with most of my tournaments, there is a check-in period, which is usually 1 hour before the event starts. And then when that hour is done, check-in is closed, and I have to make the bracket and set up everything. And sometimes I will leave the check-in open a little bit later, and I'll even go into StarCraft 2, go to the chat channel, and I'll be like, this is the last call, guys. Anybody want to check in? Like, if you don't see yourself in the bracket right now, you are not checked in. Does anyone else want to check in? And nobody will answer, and that's cool, and that's fine. That means, yay, everybody checked in. Cool. I'll set up the bracket, start it, and once I start it, I cannot change it, you know? So I'll start it, get everybody set up, and then I'll get a message saying, oh, is it too late to check in? Or, hey, I couldn't check in. Why? Because it was closed, you know? And then there's also situations where you'll explain something like, this is the bracket, it's not going to change. You can start your matches now. And then I'll still have somebody say, oh, so is the bracket done? Can we start yet? It's talking to a brick wall sometimes. So it's very unfortunate.
Another fan question, Mike Mo, I hope I'm pronouncing your username right. Mike Mo on Reddit asks, what's the one thing anyone should keep in mind when they're running a tournament?
So I feel like the most important thing that you can do when you're running a tournament is to make sure that all the information is presented very clearly, especially when you're a community organizer and stuff like that. You have to realize that a lot of players will not read everything that you write. They want to know the basics. How much is the prize pool? What server is it on? What's the format? Is it best of 3, best of 5? And what's the map pool? So those items are the most important thing to the player. All this talk about like, oh, this tournament is founded by blah, and we really hope that you enjoy it, and we have a cool graphic and stuff like that. That's great and all, and that's good for catching people's eyes. But you also have to be very aware that when you make your tournament bracket and they're trying to sign up, they need to know when exactly it starts. When are they supposed to check in? Are they supposed to check in? Are they allowed to use a barcode and things like that? If you don't concisely and like cleanly show that information, most of the time you'll have people ask you that anyways, and it just confuses a lot of people because you'll either have people not showing up or not checking in when they thought they should check in, or they thought that they didn't have to check in and things like that. So with my tournaments, I always make sure that the description is very, very concise, that they can see exactly where the map pool is and stuff like that.
So winding down here a little bit, what kind of goals do you have personally for esports in 2017? Will you try and bridge yourself into TOing offline events? I mean, anything at all? What kind of things do you have planned for the coming year?
Well, so right now I'm kind of in a transitionary period where I'm kind of looking back at what I want to do, and I'm looking at what I'm doing now, which is I was admitting a lot of tournaments online, and I don't think I was really growing from that. So right now I'm kind of stepping away from admitting like a lot of things, and I'm really thinking about what my next step will be, and I can't tell you right now what it is. Like, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. And so when I started the Olimoley, I did it because I saw a situation where I could fix it. And I think that what I'm going to be doing a lot of right now is looking at the situation either in Korea or just StarCraft 2 in general and seeing what exactly I can do to help. And I think that's what I'm learning more and more about myself that way, because I think that that's exactly what I like to do. I like to see a situation where nobody's like addressing it, or it could be made better, and I want to fix that. I guess that's just how I am. So of course I'm not good. I'm not going to stop Olimoley. I'm actually still in talks to see like how we can make Olimoley bigger and better for 2017. But besides Olimoley, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. That was all I had. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about specifically? Anything you wanted to touch on?
No, not really. I mean, like, if people want to talk to me about anything, I'm always open to talk. So,
Well, I really appreciate you coming on. This is the reshoot of the interview, so I know you've already heard this, but I want everybody else to hear it too because you were the most recommended person that I should talk to from other people like in StarCraft, in the industry and everything like that. So
hey.
thank you so much for giving me your time. Thank you for giving all of us your insight, and hopefully see some big things in 2017. Hey.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. And I'm still surprised that people suggested that you talk to me because I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just here, and I hope everybody continues to watch the Luma League in 2017 and look out for some announcements about when exactly we're coming back and all that good stuff.